DG more and talk about the culture of undirected, right? I kept sending people back when they say, oh, Oga, we need you to direct. I'll say, no, what do you think? And they will always say, my job is not to think. My job is to follow directions. And I say, no, you need to tell me what you think. And so by the time you've sent it back 6 or 7 times, they will actually come up with their view. And when they come up with that view, it may be a view I agree with, it may be one that I don't agree with, but at least I've got them to go through that mental. So the civil service is actually the engine of the state. It doesn't matter whether you're Dangote. The civil service can destroy Dangote industries within 2 days, just through policy. Right? Just through policy that constrains the way that any industry works. So that's actually the engine of the state. The state functions through the civil service. They are meant to be thoroughbred bureaucrats employed by federal and state civil service commissions. So if you're not employed by a civil service commission, you're not a civil servant in my book. Okay? You need to have been employed through a civil service commission. And your role is essentially to work in mainline ministries. And that work is to help develop policy, advise political appointees on issues of policy, procedures and processes, help to oversee how agencies are working, and then ensure that things are done properly both today and in the future. I'll give you an example of that. So the day I went to get my letter of appointment as DG, there was another lady in the office of the FGF who had been appointed executive secretary of a particular organization. And she had been an executive director in a bank before her appointment. So her complaint was, I cannot finish being executive director and come and be executive secretary. So you must change my title to director general. The FGF sought for advice and the civil service said, no. Your title, according to your law, is executive secretary. If you don't like it, it's your decision. And so the civil service is there to ensure that things are done properly now and into the future. And even if you look at issues of policy, regulation, what the government does, even the president's pronouncements, sometimes it is the civil service that checks every single word to ensure that it is according to how it should be. And so when you start to get problems, like the president complaining that people are just walking in and out of the Federal Executive Council and his son is there, you know the civil service is not being allowed to work. You just know. The same way of, oh, we make a policy announcement today, we reverse it tomorrow. We appoint this person, he has issues, we withdraw his name tomorrow. Just know that the civil service is being bypassed. Because when the civil service is functioning optimally, that doesn't happen. There are things, many things you can complain about the civil service, but there are some things you know will just not happen. Okay. So they will usually like to have a career that will last 35 years, or up to the age of 60, whichever comes sooner. And normally, they are the only ones that can become permanent secretary. I say normally because the president and the governor have the prerogative to appoint anybody permanent secretary. And we've seen under Buhari's tenure where 2 people were appointed permanent secretaries from outside. One was permanent secretary finance, the other was in power. The finance also was appointed from a bank, I think. But the civil service has a way of regulating itself, so these people didn't last very long. Nobody told them before they left, because there's a process of you need to wait and go through certain procedures and you need to learn certain things, right, before before your permanent secretary. Okay. So remember I said that permanent secretaries are meant to be thoroughbred bureaucrats. But bureaucracy too has a bad name. And so Max Weber, who is seen as the father of bureaucracy, sets out certain characteristics that he says that every bureaucracy should have. The first is that there are fixed and jurisdictional areas ordered by rules, laws, and regulations. So, again, I say to people that a civil servant is probably more afraid of disobeying the rules than disobeying the law. So, a civil servant can drive without a driver's license, which is disobeying the law. But to get a civil servant to break the public service rules is harder. Okay? The principle of hierarchy, whereby structures are established with superior and subordinate relationships. This can be positive or negative, right? Positive in that you wait your turn and your boss is your boss. There's a structure. Okay? Negative in the sense that once PEMSEC has spoken, nobody else can talk. And so even if you have a good idea that would help the PEMSEC for the end of service, people keep quiet because it's not, they are too junior to contribute. But one of the principles is there's a principle of hierarchy. Then the management of the office relies on written files. And those files can be paper files or they could be electronic. So again, when I became DG, my first ambition was I'm going to do away with paper files. I'm going to digitize everything. Then you remember that around 2005, 2006, some people were let go. They were right-sized, it was called then. Many of them collected their gratuity, collected enhanced payments, and left. I came in 2013, which was 6 years later, and then I started getting letters that I was wrongly removed. By going through the files, one by one, that I saw that, this man, you collected your money. You signed that government doesn't owe you anything now or in the future. You even sent us invitation for the second wife that you married. And now you want to come back to be reinstated. If I didn't have the paper files, I would have struggled. And the problem we have is that we often don't, when we do digitization, we often don't have the sufficient patience to be able to capture everything that was in those files. Okay, so it's something we need to be deliberate about. I tried to digitize, and then the problem was, okay, so how do I go back to 2004 when the Bureau started? So my decision had to be, okay, I'll start from this point, and then every year I'll do 1 year back. The year after I'll do 1 year back. Eventually I'll get to it. But sometimes you're making decisions, you don't know the rationale, the history behind it. And don't forget that if you're an accounting officer, this is a lifetime responsibility. Until the day you die, somebody can say, I want to reopen this person's tenure. So you need to be very careful. Okay, now corruption of occupation of offices is based on merit, expertise, and training. So that's what it should be. It's not always like that. We've corrupted this in many cases, but that's what it should be. full-time employment of personnel who are compensated and who can expect employment to be a career. So you come into a bureaucracy, you actually expect it to be a career. And then administration of offices follow general rules that are stable and can be learned. And so that's the reason why, again, those of us that came from outside used to complain. You know, somebody will write me a letter as DG. I'll give it to Director Reforms. He will give it to Deputy Director. Deputy Director will give it to Assistant. All the way to the level 10 guy that will write the response, and then they come all the way back up. So by the time I get it, the one-page letter, I have 19 pages to read in order to respond to that one-page letter. However, one of the reasons why that is done is actually training, right? You actually train people all the way down so that that decision, when it comes from you as the head, is actually owned, okay? And it has gone through a certain level of rigor. We can make it faster, of course. We can make it faster, we can make it better, but it's actually a way of even training the junior ones so that they can see how to respond to these kinds of issues in future. So that's the aspect of saying that, you know, these things follow general rules that can actually be learned and that are stable. So that's what Weber describes as the characteristics of bureaucracy. Now, if you talk to anybody, they will tell you, most people, they will tell you bureaucracy is a bad thing. However, bureaucracy is what keeps people out of jail. So long as it's not obstructive bureaucracy. So, conventional wisdom is that bureaucracy is conformist, it seeks standardization and routinization of work, and therefore causes inflexibility and resistance to change in managing public organizations. So if bureaucracy is conformist and resistant to change, why did JUPSA tell me to come and talk about innovation? The two should be in conflict with each other, shouldn't they? If bureaucracy is just to conform, do everything routinely, standardize everything, be flexible and resistant to change, then it doesn't really rhyme with what we understand to be innovation. So let's come back to that. Let's talk first, I've spoken first about the civil service, okay? Now I'm going to talk about the public service. So public servants, to my mind, are anyone that draws a salary from government budgets. Okay? Anyone that draws a salary from government budget. So Mr. President, Mr. Governor, the legislators, political aides, soldiers, doctors, teachers, anybody that gets a salary from the budget is a civil servant. Sorry, is a public servant. And their role, like I said, is to help the state to deliver public goods, either directly or through contractors. And these services could be refuse collection, health services, maintaining the roads, managing traffic, providing electricity and water, collecting taxes, and regulating the private sector. Okay, so a number of agencies actually regulate the private sector. So if you see like Nigerian Communications Commission, it regulates the telcos. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission regulates the power sector, like that. Now, they often report to boards and commissions, but also to their parent ministries. And sometimes the lines can become blurred. So sometimes, and those of you working in the states would know this. There are heads of agencies that will bypass their PEMSEC, bypass their commissioner, and report directly to the governor. usually because they are revenue generating, and they have a lot of money. So if you ask them, if you're a commissioner, for instance, is it me you're reporting to, or is it your board, or is it the governor? Sometimes the lines are not immediately clear. Some aspects of the wider service can expect permanent pensionable appointments similar to the civil service, like I've said, but others, like political appointees, will have their office limited by their letters of appointment or the regulations setting up their agencies if they work in an agency. Now remember that I said at the beginning that anyone that draws a salary from the government budget is a public servant. Now civil servants draw a salary from the public budget, don't they? So civil servants are also public servants, but not all public servants are civil servants. So the civil servants, like I said, are only those that are recruited through the Federal Service, the Civil Service Commission to work in line ministries. Okay, so those are the only ones that are civil servants. Okay. Part of the wider public service is agencies, departments, parastatals, and commissions. And these are the ones usually responsible for direct delivery of certain government functions. So if I come to Benin, come to Edo State, and I go to a hospital and get a good service, or I go to, I'm walking the streets, and the streets are clean. It is the agency that the public connects to, not the ministry. Nobody's going to say, oh, Ministry of Health is doing very well, I got a good service at my primary health care center. It's actually the agency. Or if the roads are patched, people would relate more to the agencies. If you go and buy fake drugs in a pharmacy, it's not that you remember. You won't remember Ministry of Health. Okay, so it is the agencies that are actually delivering directly certain functions of government. They are also the ones that exercise the state's monopoly of lawful coercion and the use of force. So a civil servant is probably never going to arrest you for jumping a traffic light. But what do they call them? These guys that wear black and white? VIO. Right. It's VIO that will catch you on road safety. And they can arrest you and use force to restrain you. Okay, so it's usually the agencies that, and the police, of course, and people like that can exercise the state's monopoly of lawful coercion. The agencies carry out functions that need specific expertise. So in our system, as a civil servant, you can work in the Ministry of Health today, tomorrow you are posted to agriculture, the day after you go to education, the day after that you go to the office of the head of service. Again, part of that is to ensure that because the civil servant's main role is policy, you get a rounded view of how the state functions. What that robs you of is the ability to test drugs in a place like NAFDAC. Is this drug genuine or not? For that, you need specialized knowledge, which you build over time. So agencies carry out functions that need specific expertise that may not be available in the general civil service. Usually they have much more autonomy than the civil service organizations. Quite often they are paid higher. So I was shocked to find, for instance, that a driver in a nearby agency earns more than my director that has put in 27 years, the driver. So they tend to get paid more. They can normally not become permanent secretary, normally. unless they transfer their service. They usually have considerable flexibility and discretion. So if a road safety officer catches you using your phone while driving, she has the discretion to either let you go with a warning or take you to their office and force you to buy a video or seize your license. So they have that kind of discretion. It's usually debatable the extent to which they are subject to public service rules. So some of them will tell you, I'm not subject to public service rules, that's for civil servants. I'm guided by what my establishing legislation says. They do that when it favors them. But when it doesn't favor them, they will claim, oh yeah, public service rule says that I should get A, B, C, D, E. Okay. So, that's my understanding of how the public service is organized, public service and the civil service. So you've asked me to talk about what I'm going to do next. So first of all, I'll distinguish between creativity, use of imagination that wasn't there before. That's not what we're talking about here. I was always thinking contribution to not that is still being addressed as title. But with the aim of us innovation to increase the public sector does processes and services and things are done. Introducing new access of delivery methods, and you have organization implementation of new innovation of it directly. That's constantly find ways for citizens to be satisfied with those services that they provide. Many people don't actually know how hard it is to work in the public service. And there's virtually nobody that I know that has come from the private sector that said, I could never have imagined how difficult it is. Because you're taking decisions that affect the lives of millions of people every day. None of those decisions are easy. None of them are easy. So if I set you a test now, and I say, spend 1 million naira to widen these roads and you reduce the 20 lives every year. Spend the same 1 million naira, dig 10 boreholes to save children from dying from cholera. These are the decisions you are facing every day. And regardless of the one you take, regardless of the option you take, one of those 20 people that die on the road every day could be your wife. One of those 100 children that die from cholera, from not having water to drink, could be your child. Those are the decisions you're having to make daily. And so you're constantly looking for ways to solve difficult societal challenges. So if you look at things like the header farmer crisis, for instance, the Sahara Desert is advancing southwards at the rate of 600 meters every year. And so in 10 years, the Sahara Desert would have advanced downwards by 6 kilometers. Now, if you think about a village settlement, right, 6 kilometers square, that is the level that is being exposed to lack of water and drought every year. And so you get headers advancing southwards looking for water. Of course, where they're advancing southwards to are people's farmlands. And so you get problems, societal problems caused by the environment, couched as religious problems, cultural problems, tribal problems, all of those kinds of things. And it is the job of the public servant to find a way to address some of those problems. Innovation also helps to foster transparency and citizen engagement. So more and more often, NGOs are beginning to get access to information through which they can hold government to account. Many of them have platforms that you can actually complain to. Same thing with reducing corruption, improving efficiency, promoting continuous improvement and adaptation to new challenges. So I used to live in the UK, and these days, you don't see any policeman standing on the streets. They simply need to scan your number plates, and they know whether you have a driver's license, whether your insurance is current, and whether your MOT, your vehicle inspection, is up to date. They will only come and stop you if it is not. Otherwise, you go your way. It wasn't like that when I lived in the UK some 20 years ago or so. So there's a constant move towards greater innovation and making things faster, cheaper, and easier. Innovation also helps enhance competitiveness and attract talent, and it improves staff motivation and pride. And I'll show you some examples too. Okay, there are some barriers to innovation which I'll go through very quickly in the public sector. So one is the reluctance to close down failing programs or organizations. Has anyone heard about the Rostoy report? That's actually one of the things that stifles innovation, when you just let bad things continue to happen and you don't take steps to address them. Then you over-rely on certain high performance, and the heads of service here will relate to that, because you feel, I only know 4 or 5 people who can do this work well, and then you want to kill those 4 or 5 people. it's difficult to then innovate. Sometimes technologies are available, but culture constrains it. Quite often there's no reward or incentive to innovate. In many places there's just no reward, so people don't bother. People are always afraid, what if it goes wrong? A lot of the time budgets are short-term, views are short-term. Quite often there are delivery pressures. You just need to keep churning the work out. There's no time to stop and think. And then there's a culture of risk aversion. Okay, nobody wants to be the one that is holding the baby when the baby dies. So you want to quickly pass it on to another person. So when this kind of culture exists, it's very difficult to get any sort of innovation. There are other obstacles. Sometimes there's a lack of ambition. People just feel, oh, I just need to come in, do what my predecessors have done, finish my tenure and go. Okay? A lack of ambition. A lack of investment in creativity. A lot of the time, we don't invest in getting things better. You say to people, oh, why don't you find a better way to do it? You know, you're trying to chop a tree down, your axe is blunt, but you don't have time to stop and sharpen the axe. Whereas if you sharpen the axe, it will make your work easier. Okay, so we tend not to invest in creativity and innovation in science and technology. Quite often, like I said, we are afraid. A lot of the time, we're superstitious. The status quo remains. Quite often, personal interest trumps national interest. They're looking for what is in it for me, rather than what will benefit the nation. So, how do you get innovation in the public sector? It's good to have a clear innovation vision and strategy. What do you actually want to do? What kind of society do you want to create? And I had this session with my staff last week when we had a strategy session, and I said to them, look, the word strategy seems to be confusing. You know, people seem to think it's one big thing that a consultant must write for you. So I said to them, let's just sit down as a management team and say, when we grow up, what do we want to be? Okay, when we grow up as an organization, what do we want to be? And whatever we want to be is our vision. How we get to where we want to get to is our strategy. It's really as simple as that. That's how the consultant like me will charge you money. I'll hear it from you, and I'll draw it and give you back, and you pay me. So you need to create and cultivate an innovation-friendly culture. A culture that welcomes attempts at innovation. You need to empower your employees and encourage experimentation. Okay? That means sometimes being willing to, accept certain things that you may not be totally sure of, but do it on a risk basis. Okay? So if you're a public servant, you're a head of service, you're an accounting officer, if it goes wrong, it's on your head. So you need to be able to distinguish between those things that are dangerous, which you must micromanage, and those things that you can allow people to, learn from their mistakes about. There's a need to actually train people, have training and development programs on innovation skills. Because a lot of people have very good ideas, but they find it difficult to translate it into something useful. So that's what I said is the difference between creativity and innovation. So a lot of people are very creative, right? But to actually turn it into something useful and beneficial to society sometimes requires training. I'll give you an example. Somebody can have a very good idea about something they want to do. they want to start a particular business, but they have zero knowledge about how money works. Okay? They don't know how money works. Some of us would find it difficult to run a business. Because if you run a business, money will come today, tomorrow there will be no money. Me that I'm used to regular salaries, I'll struggle. It takes a bit of training to say, okay, you've got 10 million today, you may not get for another 2 months. So how do I pay myself a salary that can, sustain me till then? How do I package my products? How do I market it? How do I understand basic bookkeeping to ensure that people don't run down my business? All of those kinds of things actually require some training. Partnership with the private sector helps, as well as attracting and retaining innovative talent. And you'll see some examples of all of this shortly. There are some necessary conditions if you want innovation to flourish. First of all, you need to motivate people. If you're constantly putting your staff down, you don't know anything, they just won't bother after a while. If somebody does good work and you don't reward them and encourage them, they won't bother after a while. So motivation is very important. Then I've talked about skills, equipping them with the skills with which to innovate. And then lastly, giving them the opportunity to actually do it. So I'll show you some examples now of public service innovations from around the world. So this is from the US, and some you may not actually know that they came from the public sector. Okay? One is radar. So a plane is flying. The radar with which you can tell where the plane is came from the public sector. The same thing with if you've ever done an MRI scan. That again is a public sector innovation. Microchips that are in your phones, your computers, your TV, your laptops, same thing. Subtitles for movies, barcodes, DNA tracing. The smartphone that you are holding today was invented by the public service, by NASA. Okay? GPS satellites, we all rely on Google Maps. It was actually the public sector that funded the development of satellite navigation. Same thing with the internet. Same thing with what we know as Google today. So as far as the internet goes, the US government wanted to know, is there any way to even link computers and have them talk to each other? And they funded that research. The same thing with Google. They funded students at Stanford to have a means of searching large databases to produce knowledge. Self-driving cars, if you use an Apple phone, there's a feature called Siri. So again, Siri was funded by government before Apple now bought it. And then of course, the coronavirus vaccine, where we needed to get a vaccine within 1 year. Never been done before. Could never have been done without governments. Okay, so those are some innovations in some public service innovations. The Federal Civil Service actually has an innovation challenge that it does every year. I've been a judge on it for about four years now, about 4 editions. And these are some of the ideas that have come out of Federal Civil Service. One is an electronic induction system, where if you're employed into the civil service, you can actually almost self-induct using this electronic system. Another idea was how to recycle waste within the Federal Secretariat, improved access control so that people, hawkers don't just come into the Secretariat to sell all sorts of things. The combined, what's COMPRE again? Combined promotion exam that you do between, is it between level 8 and 9 or 9 and 10? Huh? Okay. So that exam, someone has actually, a civil servant has actually developed an app through which you actually take the exam on your phone. Then they put in place an anonymous whistleblowing system. A civil servant developed an office-based solution that helps to reallocate space within the secretariat. So you see certain ministries, they have this amount of space, this other ministries, everybody is sitting on top of each other. Nobody has actually looked at the occupied spaces and the open spaces and seen how to move people around in a way that maximizes the use of that space. That's another solution that a federal civil servant developed. Again, a fleet maintenance system for government vehicles. This, I think this is Edo State as well, right? Has also been proposed by the federal government. And you can see the federal head of service saying that innovation in Nigeria's public services is yielding tangible results. Some of the people that came up with these ideas have actually left to go and start a business, and they are doing well. They were encouraged to nurture the idea, commercialize it, they were given some training, and they're now doing very well out of that business. Some other examples, in Rwanda, a digital platform that with which citizens can access various government services, including healthcare and education. Makes it more convenient for citizens, saves time, has reduced infrastructure costs, lowered personnel costs, has won an award, and is seen as a model for digital transformation. Kenya has these Huduma centers, which are like one-stop shops, where citizens can access over 50 government services from one point. Okay, healthcare, education, immigration, and all that. First ones launched in 2013. Some of the gains: reduced bureaucracy and waiting times, increased transparency, convenient, accessible services for citizens, improved citizen satisfaction and trust in government. Some of what he has achieved: he has serviced 10 million people in about 10 years, with a 90% customer satisfaction rate. So customers come into these centers and feel, oh, I've received a very good service from my government today. 75% reduction in waiting times, 50% reduction in corruption and bribery, and increased revenue collection and government efficiencies. These are all examples of ways in which the public service has innovated to do its job better. So I'll end with some recommendations, both for the heads of service here and for the BRIST Commission. I would encourage each head of service to consider introducing an innovation challenge similar to the one that the head of service has. One thing a lot of people don't realize about civil servants, public servants, is that they're not actually very greedy. This big thing I'm telling you about that the federal head of service has done, the total prize pot was 7.5 million naira. So the winner will get like 3 million. The second runner, the runner-up will get 2 million. Like, it's not a huge amount of money. But look at the kinds of thinking and participation that it is encouraging. So I'll ask each head of service to consider doing that. By all means, reach out to the office of the head of service of the Federation. They will give you templates that you can use, scoring templates and things like that, and they use to do it. I recommend supporting innovators with training and access to finance to enable their ideas to come to fruition and enter the market. And that's something that an organization like JUPSA has as part of its plans to do. It's also something that is really necessary to do. I think we should challenge our universities to produce low-cost, zero-cost innovations. It shouldn't just be teaching theory. So DG Jupsa was at Oxford with me and the governor. That was in last month. And the president of Oxford University announced that 50% of all the venture capital that comes into the UK comes to Oxford University. 50%. And that every year, the university spins off 25 new companies that go into the market and start to make money. 25 every year. And so it's unacceptable that our universities are just here, selling handouts. I think we need to challenge them to come up with innovations. I recommend that the Breast Commission should consider introducing a Breast Innovation Challenge. So all of these coming from the 6 states you can actually have like an overall winner from the zone of all the good ideas that are won in each of these states. And the other thing that the Breast Commission could do is to set up a system to share innovation knowledge and tools. So this innovation has happened in Akwa Ibom, we need to take it to Edo. So JUPSA has happened to Edo, and we need to take it to Delta. And I think that's what we're doing today. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was, I think we need to put another round of applause today for Dr. Joe Arrow. I know that we would have some questions and we want to ask Dr. Joe, and we'll have to just indicate so we can take those questions. Yes. Okay, we are still soaking the lecture in.
While we are soaking the lecture in, the MC said that I authored a book about how Nigerians behave. One of the things in that book is that no matter how much you clap after somebody finished talking, the MC will always say, give him another round of applause.
Okay, there's one hand behind there. Okay, go ahead, please.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation. Standing on the already established protocol, my name is Anastasia Ifana from the Edo State Primary Healthcare Development Agency. So in Edo State, we have had over the last year what we refer to as design sprint exercises that has brought together public and civil servants from all MDAs to come up with ideas based on what we use an approach that is very intensive, user research based, and we've had that over a couple of months. Now, the challenge for me and my question is the practicability and implementation afterwards, because it was quite intensive and it was a new thing for me. But we came up with so many ideas that when implemented would actually move the needle of progress for us within the public and civil service. So my question is, how do we translate the work that we did during the design, or we do, or the innovations that we come up with, to make them implement and to be able to implement them in the near future, rather than just gathering them, and then we don't see them implemented as public and civil servants in the near future. Thank you very much.
It's a very good question. I'm sure the head of service of Edo State would have something to say about that. But something to learn from the way we do the innovation challenge at federal level is that the key point is always, is it affordable? Okay? So people have come up with innovations of, oh, we want to do an independent power plant for the secretariat. From where? So that's why these things need to be circumscribed. And if you look at what I talked about, when I was talking about challenging our universities, I said it needs to be at low cost or no cost, because the resources are not infinite. So it's really important to focus on things that are affordable, things that are achievable, rather than raise expectations. You know, if you've gone through this intensive process and you come out with something at the end, yes, it will be really demoralizing if nothing happens. But if you take an innovation lens to it, you realize that it's actually something you can make happen with or without government. And that's why I gave you the example of people who have actually started some of these innovations and have gone on to, you know, run them as businesses. Some have started NGOs because they believe in it as a passion. So, but yeah, head of service, do you want to contribute?
Thank you, sir. First, let me appreciate you, sir, for this very brilliant and thought-provoking presentation. We didn't expect any less from you. So thank you very much. The young woman who spoke, with all regards, the young woman who spoke is one of our first class graduates. She belongs to the graduate development program that was set up. The idea really is to create a culture of innovation within the system. I agree with her, and that's one of the issues I raised with them last week when we had a meeting, that we haven't really quite leveraged some of the innovations that have come up. Very, very beautiful. The first cohort did a lot, and the governor, they did a presentation for the governor. Several things have come up, but we didn't follow. And I'll take responsibility for that. You know, when we had the meeting last week, or this week, Monday, or last week, I said to them, I apologize. Because really, it is a disincentive to innovations for you to just say, oh, go and do it, and at the end of the day, don't follow through. So many things have come. So what we propose to do is to involve the ministries. Those who are doing the thinking in science and technology, in this and that, to be part of the team that actually accesses and takes these innovative ideas so that they can progress work, you know. But again, we also have the Edo Innovates. That's a structure that has been set up by the government to take on some of these issues. But it's statewide, so it's not really for the service alone. Over the next 1 week, in fact, we're just waiting for this program to finish. We'll be in Rwanda with that team, our leading team, to share ideas what they're doing over there. So what I'm saying is that there's already a structure. And so we're hoping that the encouragement that we're giving, creating that environment, because that's key, so that people can understand that this is not a regular, the civil service or the public service, that whether you are doing anything or not, it doesn't matter. When promotions come, you are promoted and all of that. What you contribute, what your offerings are in terms of the growth and development of that ministry, that department, that agency that you belong to, will help, obviously, when it comes to your advancement and improvement system. But what we're also trying to do, because some days ago, I was thinking, we spend a lot of money on developing websites, for instance. And we have people within the ICT who have had the opportunity in the past, when they were out there, of developing websites from beginning to the end. So why don't we leverage that knowledge that is now within the service? But how do we ensure that they're not just doing it as public servants without a reward? That's the issue you mentioned earlier. There has to be a reward system. So all of that, we are building into our new rules. So it's not just like, oh, well, I'm a civil servant, I come to work, 8 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I go away. It doesn't matter. You know, so all of these ones now have rewards. I apologize, my sister. Again, we're taking these issues. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, and please permit me to stand on already established protocol. I just want to add what the service has said. My name is Isaac Ebewele. I'm the Special Advisor to the Governor on Strategy. What we're doing at Edo Innovate today is to upgrade and upgrade that institution. Before now, that institution used to be part of our skills development agency, but now we're trying to legislate to make it a standalone innovation agency. And just to encourage Deba and her colleagues and every other person that was part of the design sprint, what we will do going forward is to bring their innovations, their ideas, to compete with that of others from outside of the service. We shall be having our technology week very soon, and $800 million will be given to 50 innovators in Edo State via Edo Innovate. So these kinds of innovation from within the service will take them to compete and also benefit from these kinds of investment. I thought I should add this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abba, for your brilliant presentation. And I'm going to stand on all already established protocols. My first question, you answered it in your recommendation, so thank you for that. But I have another one. And I'm asking, could you please suggest ways through which the civil and public service might manage different generations at work? I do see, as DG Juke said, that there's a lot of disruption that has happened. It was a Gen Z who asked the first question. I suspect that, if it was not a certain generation, that question might not even have come up here. But it's Gen Z, they are audacious and all of that. And of course, they'll put everybody on blast. So I don't know, are we going to be able to, might you, suggest some ways that we can manage it? And then another thing for me that I'm greatly concerned about is around institutional memory. For those of us who have come into the service from outside, and maybe even just younger people coming with our new ideas, new innovation, I've learned from you that the bureaucracy serves, so I'm not anti-bureaucracy, but I want a bureaucracy that works, not directed kind of thing. So how do we marry both and ensure that we continue to have a professionalized bureaucracy that is not anti-intellectual, like Professor Olokwa said yesterday? Thank you.
Okay, it's a difficult question, but I think Edo has already started to answer that question. So it's bringing a blend of bright young people into a system that is stable and mature. You're right, that relationship needs to be managed because I think there's a song, I don't remember the name of the artist now. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing. I'm terrible at singing. But it says every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come beating at your door. So it's not a new thing that people feel that they could have done better than those before them, and those before them think, wait until you get to my age, then you will understand. So it's not totally new, but it needs to be managed in such a way that the system is deploying all the resources that it has optimally. So in my office, for instance, there are things that I know that it is young people that can do them. I just know. So if it's like, oh, we want to reduce stress in the office, we want to find a way to have work-life balance, I know the people I'll go to. If you go to people my age, they will tell you, I did not become chief executive through work-life balance. I became chief executive through work ethic. If you go to a younger person, interview them for work, the first question is there opportunity for remote work? If there's none, they're not interested. So we've had to find a balance. So in my office now, the rule is that you are to come into the office a minimum of 3 days a week. Because if everybody works remotely, you also lose that team dynamics, right? You remember during COVID, when we had a lockdown, I just noticed that all my staff that were single became depressed. Because coming to work was actually a major social interaction for them. Those that were married fought more than ever before. Because all of a sudden, you and this man or you and this woman are locked in the same room from morning till night. So because of that, we actually even had to introduce counseling for people, psychological counseling, to try and address some of those issues. So these days we have 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. But what we try to ensure is that people come in teams in those 3 days. Okay, so the finance team comes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The operations teams comes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that somehow that team dynamic still retained while you have that little bit of flexibility. So the answer is really to find creative ways to ensure that people are performing optimally and that you're using the full array of the resources that you have. And if you're in a learning environment, the older people will learn from the younger people will learn from the older people. It doesn't look like that at the start, because younger people always feel these old people, they don't know anything. The older people too feel these young ones, they don't know anything. So if you foster that culture of working together, using your full resources to its maximum potential, then you're likely to start to address that problem. But that, as a leader, must be your mindset. The older people are not superior, the younger people are not superior. I want the best out of everyone, and that often means sometimes putting people together and ensuring that they have the debates and learn to respect each other. Yeah.
Yes, please, your question.
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Dr. Bureaucracy. I'm the provost of Edo State College of Health Sciences and Technology. I want to bring tertiary institution into this presentation because we do have both public servants and civil servants on our campus. Now, I need your help to navigate this. When a student, of example, develops something, when it comes to medical devices, you mentioned COVID-19. The challenge that we have right now in our tertiary institution is who owns the right, the patent. Because the student or faculty is using all the resources of that institution, owned by the government, by the taxpayers. When it comes to that area of who owns the right, when that device actually going into the market, partnering with the private sector, how do we navigate not to discourage both the students and the faculty member? That's the help I need.
It's a very important point, and it's a legal issue. Head of service and I are both lawyers. We will charge for that advice. But a principal tenet of commercial law is that the agreement rules. So whatever is the agreement. So if you want to own the copyright, you need to get the student to sign immediately you are admitting them that anything you develop in this university belongs to the university. You must have that. That's why some of us that work for donors as consultants, they will actually get you to sign that any output from that work belongs to them. If you are not happy, you don't take the job. Okay, and that even if you have to use your own work, it must be with permission from them. So it depends on the agreement that you enter into. Head of service, do you want to add to that? Okay.
I think that why these things are coming up is that we haven't been doing things like this. And there has not been before now a culture of innovations, even within the universities and tertiary institutions. And so now that we're in this different world and a lot of things are coming up, we now have to begin to think through these processes. Otherwise, things will start falling through the cracks, and that is not good for the system. So I agree with you that these things are actually a matter of an agreement between you and the officer who is coming in. But to encourage them, it's also important that while the intellectual property is in the institution or in government, there's something from it that inures to the benefit of the innovator. If you don't do that, you discourage innovations. And that has to be seen from the word go, so that the young one who's coming in knows that if I am able to do this, I will receive something. If it don't, I will not own it completely. Why I use the resources of the institution to help me grow and develop this thing, this idea, I will get something out of it. So it encourages him to go the whole length and then to ensure that he does what he has to do.
Absolutely. And you can even have a system where he owns the copyright or she owns the copyright and the institution gets a percentage. So you use all our resources and all that, so that is worth 10% or 15% or whatever it is in terms of rights. So you can do it in different ways.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. This is the first time I'm hearing you present. I'm very impressed. My contribution is on collaboration, talking about the base states collaborating. And I want to give an example of what happened in River State. We had a joint, NLNG was the first gas plant that we had in the country. We had a collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Environment. I came from the River State Ministry of Environment. And we are monitoring the process from construction to the plant came on board. So by the time trains 1 to 3 came on board, they had dug 9 water wells in Bonu. I know, knowing that it's an island, the abstraction now and the recharging was not equivalent. So we, the monitoring team, had to think of a way to solve this water problem. And the collaboration of the federal and state teams came up with the idea of using air cooling. And till today, from trains 4 to 7 that they are running, they are using air cooling in the plant. So that collaboration between the state and federal gave the public sector an idea of what to use, which they are running with. So it's indeed a good one for the best states. Whatever they are doing, better collaboration will lead to new ideas and better ways to do things that we are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I agree completely with that. Running a donor project at a point was instrumental in making the secretariat of the Nigerian Governors Forum a professional secretariat. So before then, it was just governors meeting and going up and down. Now it's actually a proper, professional secretariat that has a health advisor, education advisor, infrastructure advisor, like that. Professional people that do that. And I always say that if you want to get governors to behave differently in this country, there are two approaches. One is give them an incentive. Okay? So I don't know how many people are aware of the SIFTAS program. Okay, the World Bank SIFTAS program. So it provides, it's a $750 million loan to the federal government, which then disburses it as grants to the states. And it's very straightforward. You know, if you want to be transparent, you put your budget on the website, you get $2 million. Okay, you audit your accounts, you get $2 million. You have your procurement law compliant with the ancestral model code on procurement, you get $1.5 million, like that. Every single governor participated. So for the first time, we have all our budgets online. We have all our laws, all our procurement laws compliant. So that's one way. The other way to get governors to behave differently is by consensus. So when they've all met and say, this is what we want to do, they may have internal disagreements, but once they decide, this is what we want to do, they all do it. So it's the same way that governors chose to address issues of polio, the same way that they're now in court with the federal government about this issue of local government and all of that. So collaboration is very, very important. And starting with collaboration among the praised states first, before you even talk about collaboration with federal, with the private sector, just getting better collaboration among the states. With events like this, I think makes all the difference. The Governors Forum has also, with our help, run events where which it calls share fairs. So it's like a fair. So each state in a particular zone, for instance, will come and showcase what it believes is doing well, and others will learn from it. The Governors Forum facilitates interstate visits. They help to share expertise. So if you want to do a cash management plan, this person is good at doing it. They share tools. This is the one that Kaduna is using. You don't need to go and develop from scratch. So those are the kinds of things that the Breast Commission can really help with.
Dr. Abasa, I made some comments before, but those were comments that were responses to questions that were asked by someone. Now I want to make my comment and answer my question. Just one of those things. Thank you, sir, for that part, for the entire thing, but particularly that part that talked about innovations. Very, very glad about that, because that's something that we're thinking a lot about. And it's something like very just walking right now. The challenge is to take it to the next level. And I see that a few of the things that I've had in mind for some time, working on, have actually been done by maybe the federal. So it's something they can look at, study what they have done. In fact, I didn't even know, I'm surprised that they had that kind of thing that they have been doing. So you talked about collaboration, building synergy and all of that. I think it can also be between us, apart from horizontally, it can also be vertically. So we can leverage that one. We visited Kenya last time, talking about innovations, and we had the opportunity of going to Korea. Very exciting. And we're taking that forward. That is being worked on right now. I'm glad we mentioned fleet management. I'll talk about it during my presentation. And I think that's something we can all also learn from. This program is to give us the opportunity to learn from each other. We have some things that we've done that you can learn from. You have a lot of things also that you have done. I go ahead yesterday that we can learn from. Fleet management, I did some work which was published. I think I sent it to some other people. How we conceptualize it. How involuntarily, even though we have a consultant process, but it's something that has been acknowledged. It's the work in progress, but it's something that is irrevolutionary. that was a challenge for us. I was chairman of the auction committee. I still am. And one of the things that shocked me once was when we went around to see where our vehicles were. And we went to some mechanic auctions, and we saw vehicles that had been abandoned there, our own vehicles, for almost 10 years. Some had even grown, not grass, but bushes in them. You know, it was difficult to imagine that these were vehicles that were bought with hard-earned public money. And so, something needed to be done. And the government conceptualized it and gave us this idea. We got a lot of money. Fantastically well. I'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm sure too, our colleagues can learn from what we have done. You talked about digitalization and then the constraints that usually result tangentially. But in reality, digitalization has to do with two parts. The first part is the one that is not too visible, and that's a lot of work. That is the part that has to do with digitizing documents. And for us, it took a long time, and it's still going on. We have digitized over 50 million documents as a date. Over 50 million folios we put into the system, and we're still going on. What has presented some difficulties for us, special documents like maps, like those that are produced from the Ministry of Fiscal Planning and all of that, has been some difficulty. But we are working on that. So that's the part that is almost always latent. The part that is painted, that's clear for everybody to see, is maybe the downstream part where they call it the petroleum, where you now see the beauty of it, the e-governance itself. But e-governance is based on a foundation that has been laid. And that's why I said yesterday, you're talking about broadband, you're talking about internet penetration, you're talking about fiber optics. These are things that are being done, which nobody actually sees. But the beauty of it, which is using what has been done, those digitized documents to run government, that's the final part of it, which everybody sees. So it's important that we note that, so that we understand that it's doable. We have demonstrated it that it's doable with the will, political will, and with leadership at every level, not just at the governor's level. It is doable. And then one thing we must also realize, which is the beauty of it, is that I just give an instance to demonstrate it. Last year, I had a situation where an officer from the Ministry of Justice overstayed. He was supposed to have retired. I'm sure when Madam knows about this, my peers. But he overstayed. And he was wanting to stay more. Yeah. Because he had done some things about his papers. In fact, when I asked the Civil Service Commission to give me his document, we went together in the Ministry of Justice. This guy should have retired. They didn't find anything. In fact, what they found was in sync with what he had apparently said things had happened. But I told CSS, I was able to access the document, that one that I had originally, which was already in the system. So you can see that if not for that, it would have been difficult to deal with it. Everything that was physical, that was available, was in favor. But we had done something, we had moved ahead. We had digitized the files in the Ministry of Justice, including his own. And so I just showed him something, and I told him to one time, and the next thing he brought him retirement. So that's it. These things are very, very important, very, very important. It's something that we don't have a choice about. In the great states, we must go along this. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Head of Service. I agree totally with that. I'll tell you a short story about the time I was in government. This is absolutely true. There's a DG of an agency. I won't mention his name. He finished his tenure and overstayed for 2 years. Nobody knew because he never made any noise. He never published anything, never went on TV, and people just forgot about him. As is usually the case, there was a falling out in sharing. And somebody told somebody in the private sector that, this my useless DG that refused to give me my share, His tenure even finished 2 years ago. That guy, who was an MD of a private sector organization, wrote to the president to say, I'm interested in this position, and this man's tenure finished 2 years ago. That was how he became DG of that organization, and this other man was asked to go. So it just tells you that even at national level, some basic things that should exist. I mean, you should almost have a calendar alert on a simple database that will just tell you this man's tenure is ending in a few years' time. That wasn't there. And I'm talking 2015. I'm not talking 20 years ago. You know, as recently as 2015, we had that issue. On your second point about fleet management, very, very impressive. Again, one of the innovations that a civil servant came up with as part of this innovation competition we did, a group of civil servants, there are about 4 or 5 that made up a team. You know, IT people, engineers, and all of that. They actually developed a system that were put in every government car that reports on fuel usage, reports on mileage. You can actually use it to track wherever the person is going to, wherever the driver is going to, how much fuel is using, and all of this. It didn't take much. I mean, most of us have car trackers in our cars, right? But customizing it to the environment was the actual innovation. So it can be done. So I think it's a very, very impressive initiative. And at the time that the governor mentioned it to me years ago, I felt that the resistance would be so much because people feel that their cars are part of their status. So to then have a system where you're pulling cars is just alien to our system. So I told him, be ready for war. And he said, no, don't worry, I have a way of giving them money. Right? I'll give them the car allowance as part of their salaries, and then the complaints will reduce. So I'm really happy that it was able to work.
Okay, please a round of applause for our speaker.
I'm free at last.
Not yet free, sir. Not yet free. Please, at this moment, we want to call on all our special guests in the front row, the heads of service and our special guests here, so we can take a picture with our presenter before we go on the short break. Please. Then immediately after this, all the permanent secretaries will join, and then after that, the heads of MDAs will join. Okay, so all permanent secretaries, can we please?
You guys are blocking the official photographer.
Okay, so all heads of MDAs. All heads of MDAs, please quickly